Hello there everybody, Sam's Trains here, welcome back to the railway. Up to date, I've got another review of a tiny little locomotive. Today's loco is very interesting. It's not British and it's not even from a brand I've ever looked at before. It's from a company called Liliput, who I believe, I'm not certain, but I believe they are owned by Bachmann. Now the loco is this. Yes, I wasn't kidding, it is absolutely tiny. It's Austrian, I believe, and it's a class X625, and it's basically a little track maintenance vehicle, which I absolutely love. Before we get this out and give it a try, let's talk price. So the RRP for this thing is £149.90, and that's Bachmann. I think Liliput is owned by Bachmann. Don't ask me how I know that, that's just a stab in the dark. £149.90? Well, I bought this from Rails of Sheffield for less than £50. It was £49.50. So where does that price come from? Come on, Bachmann. We know it's you, just under a different name. People aren't going to believe that this is worth £150. It doesn't look like more of a bargain because the RRP is absurd. Why not make the RRP £2,000? People are equally likely to be convinced by that. I don't know. So yeah, I mean, because they've done that, the expectations for this are now really, really high. So it's got to be die-cast, hasn't it? Plastic tat is not going to cut this, and hopefully it will be mechanically sound. But let's find out, let's see what this is like. Come with me, let's give it a test. So I was absolutely astounded by that RRP. I know the RRPs don't mean an awful lot, but I've got giant steam locomotives with RRPs smaller than that. That is absolutely unbelievable. Anyway, so yeah, Liliput, let's find out what this is like. I'll show you the end of the box, although if you're not Austrian, or German I guess, it's not going to help you too much. You can see that it's HO scale. Oh, I'm going to butcher this, aren't I? Motor Barn Wagon X625.033, I think that's what this is. Beige, so I can understand one of the words. OBB, I think that's the Austrian railway name. And it's Epoch 3, which is the era, basically, I think, isn't it? It's a bit like the era system we have over here. Okay, well, I think we can look at this. There's not much on the back of the... Oh, there, look, there's Bachmann's name. Yes, as if it wasn't obvious. Right, yeah, let's get this out and find out what this is like. I'm really, really curious to find out. All right, so it's very similar to Bachmann's other packaging, actually, isn't it? Yes, does the job, though, doesn't it? All right, there's the little blister pack. We've got, ooh, quite a lot of paperwork in here, actually. Right, cool, blimey. Let's have a look at some of this, then. So, right... I think unless you are German, you're going to struggle with this. Let's have a little... Oh, well, it does show you a little bit. Yeah, you can see a bit about the mechanism there. It looks quite similar to the Dapol Sentinel, actually, from the underside. It probably isn't similar at all. Let's skip through a little way. You can see the gear train there. Look at the number of gears there. Blimey, that's probably why it's so expensive. Very, very geary. Operating instructions. Well, there you go. I guess we do have an English section. And there we have a little history on the vehicles themselves. So if you'd like to pause and read it, feel free to. That looks good to me. I will inspect that more closely off camera so that I know what I'm dealing with, but I don't imagine it will be that difficult to use. Looks like a parts list maybe. Yeah, there we go. Well, it's not very, very detailed. It doesn't go down to the gears and such, but you can see a list of the parts there, which is pretty cool, I guess. And on the back, is that the same thing? No, no, oh no, we do have the gears. We do have the gears, and also the motor as well. It looks like a little cordless motor, which is quite interesting. It looks to have a flywheel on it as well. That's pretty nice. So yeah, it seems that there is a degree of quality with this model, which you would blooming well hope for, wouldn't you? Given the massive price, even for 50 quid, this little thing has to be good, doesn't it? Right. Details on the bottom, that's good, we'll take a look at those then. Yeah, let's start unpacking, see what this thing is like. I couldn't resist buying this, by the way, when I saw it for just 50 quid at Rails. I wasn't a fool, I didn't think I was getting a bargain, but I thought 50 quid doesn't seem unreasonable for such a thing. Anyway, what have we got in there? It looks like there are some vacuum pipes on that sprue. What those other bits are, I am not entirely sure. I thought those two large bits were NEM couplings to start with, but no, I don't think they are. Anyway, yeah, I guess we'll figure that out. Although I'm pretty sure the instructions didn't mention where they go. I think it said on that parts diagram, I think I just saw buffer beam detail, well, that's about it. Anyway, well, it's pretty light. I'm not feeling an awful lot of weight to this, but it is tiny, and it's going to be difficult to gauge the weight. So All right, well, it's nicely packaged, it must be said. And here it is. Wow. It's a little bit greasy. I'll have to maybe clean it at some point. But wow, it's a neat and tidy little thing, isn't it? Is it made of metal? No, it's pretty plasticky, and it shows really because it's quite lightweight, but not to worry. Yeah, I mean, it looks all right. It looks reasonably nicely detailed. The buffers aren't sprung or anything like that, and it's immediately obvious that there's no proper interior. I mean, you can see the circuitry inside. Yeah, this is why the £150 price tag makes this absolutely absurd, because nice as it is, it's quite clearly a very cheap little thing, isn't it? I don't know. Well, maybe I'm being unfair. If this looks really good up close and if it runs absolutely perfectly, well, no, it still wouldn't be worth anywhere near 150 quid. For 50 quid, that would be fine, but it doesn't explain why the RRP is basically 3 times that. It annoys me, that really does annoy me. You think you're getting a bargain, but obviously you're not. You're just paying about the right price. Anyway, I'm going to stop moaning if I can, and we will take a close look at this shortly. But first of all, here is a small amount of information on these little vehicles. Much like the Wickham trolleys over here in the UK, the OBB EP625 were intended for track inspection, transport of railway personnel and also of materials used in maintenance. OBB stands for the Austrian Federal Railways, and they built many of these little vehicles from the late 1950s onwards. Notwithstanding the ageing design, because some of them could be over 60 years old at this point, some examples are still actually in use today. The class was powered by a diesel engine, and it operated much like a car would, with a clutch and accelerator pedal, which is quite interesting. No steering wheel though, for obvious reasons. And also narrow gauge versions were also produced as well, which is quite interesting. That's basically all I've got though, so let's take a close look at the model itself. Well, there it is folks, up close, and you know what, there's nothing wrong with this at all, it's absolutely fine. However, it's just not got any of the features that I'd expect it to have in order to justify that absolutely outrageous price tag. So first of all, the body, at least, I don't know about the chassis at the moment, but the body is entirely made of plastic, including the roof, which has just been painted with this sort of metal fleck paint, which doesn't look very convincing. And that is reflected in the weight as well. The whole thing weighs in at just 49 grams, which is less than the Hornby Ruston here. And you know what? That Hornby Ruston costs £60 less on RRP, and the body was largely made of metal, so that's not particularly good. And there's more where that came from as well. As you can see, the grills here, they're not etched or anything like that. For 150 quid RRP, you'd want etched grills, wouldn't you? The little horns here, again, just part of the same material as the roof. I've already mentioned the buffers, which are not sprung or anything like that. Maybe they're not sprung in real life, but they do look like the kind that would be sprung, so I would be inclined to guess that they should be. We do have the wipers here fitted to the 4 front and back windows, which are made of metal and separately fitted, and that is quite a nice feature. And you've also got the handrails either sides of the doors, which are made of metal and separately fitted. But again, the doors aren't particularly realistic. They don't open or anything like that. I think for that kind of price, you would want opening doors. And an interior. I can now show you a bit more of the interior. Yeah, that sucks, doesn't it? It's incredibly unrealistic. The floor of the vehicle is basically level with the windows, and that would be incredibly obvious, wouldn't it? In order for this to impress, more ingenuity is required in making this more realistic. The printed detail is okay. I think you will know better than I do because I can show you the ultra close-ups. So we've got the printed signage here underneath the doors. Hopefully you can get a look at that. I'll also show you the transition between the sort of creamy colour and the greeny colour with that silver stripe. How does that look? It looks all right from a distance, but you'll have to let me know what it's like up close. The buffers are nicely decorated. You've got that white outline around them, which look pretty good. And then on the bottom right-hand corner of the end, you've got the little printed detail as well, which I will try and get a close-up on. Despite not having fitted any of the buffer beam detail, you can see we do have quite a bit of detail fitted around there already, including this lamp. I'm hoping these lights are actually going to work. They've got to, haven't they? They've got to for what this thing cost. The underframe looks okay as well. You can see the axle boxes and some of the sort of support structure, I suppose. Again, though, all of that is made of plastic. And I think more or less that is it where the detail is concerned. There's not an awful lot more to see. You've got an exhaust over on the other side, which replaces one of the handrails. Again, though, it's all just made of plastic. It doesn't look particularly convincing. In fact, even for the 50 quid that I paid for this, £49.50, there's nothing about it that is particularly impressive. Having seen the model, I would struggle to recommend this for more than 40 quid, to be quite honest with you. given what else is out there on the market. Let's take a look at what else is out there. So you've got this is the Hornby Thompson 01. This little beast here costs £40 more than the Thompson 01. How is that possible? Look at this is the Hornby L&YR Pug. You could buy 2 of these for the price of this little beastie here and still have £10 left over. I just don't understand. It beggars belief, doesn't it? And when the price tag beggars belief, the model better beggar belief as well, otherwise it ain't going to impress. Well, I haven't looked at this mechanically yet. I will remove the body and have a look at the chassis, see what we're dealing with there, and then we'll get it down onto the track and give it its first test. Let's give it a try. So there it is then, down onto the track, and crikey, isn't it tiny? Absolutely tiny this thing is. I'm pleased to say that mechanically speaking, as well it should, it looks a little bit more competent than the other aspects of the model. If you remove the base plate, you can see that the axles are sitting into proper turned metal bearings, which is great, and that should help to keep the friction down from the 7 gears which are visible on the base there. I'm not entirely sure how necessary it is that both axles be driven, because obviously that system is going to produce quite a lot of drag. However, it is quite nice that we've got all wheels driven, and all wheels pick up as well. There are traditional pickups. Removing the body finally reveals some metal. You can see we have the chassis block inside there, which is where the bulk of the weight of the model comes from, although at 49 grams there isn't very much weight at all, that's for sure. Anyway, so on paper, yeah, the mechanism looks quite nice. I didn't go any further than just removing the body because I didn't want to damage it before I actually got the thing tested. I think, like I say, it's got a coreless motor and it appears to have a little flywheel as well, which is quite impressive. So mechanically, it gets a thumbs up. In practice though, let's give this a try. I'm going to set this to forwards, give it some power and see how this runs. It's not yet been run in, so don't draw any definite conclusions right now. But here we go, the first test. Okay, it is working, and I did see a little bit of light turn on, which is great. So we've got working lamps. They don't appear to be very bright at the moment, barely noticeable at all, in fact, which is unfortunate. But performance-wise, that is looking really, really good, isn't it? Really, really good. I would expect a little thing like this to be cutting out to start with, but it's not. Look at that. Go on then, let's find out what the crawl is like. Very, very good. Any slower? A bit more. Okay, so at last we're starting to get a bit of what we paid for here. The performance is very, very strong indeed. Even without being run in fact. That is marvellous. Very controlled. Yeah, I mean, this is... I mean, if it is a coreless motor, I'm not 100% sure it is. It looked like one. If it is, then this is a very good advocate, isn't it, for coreless motors? Wow, that's great. Ooh, just about died on the express points. You can't quite see because it's gone out of shot. But it can't do any other because the wheelbase is so small. So is that going to be a problem at 50% speed? Yes, maybe. Let's try again. Back up. I mean, it's very unfair to run this over express points, particularly due to the size of the wheelbase, but it's quite important for running in purposes that it can do it. Ooh, got over it that time. So it's a bit hit and miss. It just needs to carry itself across. Is there any evidence that that flywheel's working? No, I don't know. Doesn't look like it. Anyway, let's get this thing running then. We will see how it gets on the main layout. And then once it's done 30 minutes in each direction, we will come back and reassess. Okay, here we go. So to see what a design challenge the lights must have been, it is unfortunately wasted. You cannot tell that there is a light on there, can you? You just can't tell. They're so dim. There's no point to them. But besides that, it is running extremely nicely and reliably, and of course I can't fault it for not working properly on the express points because it's probably really not designed for them, at least not insulated ones. So overall, that's really, really good. I'll leave this to run in then, and I will see you shortly. Right, there we go, running in has concluded, and overall that was really successful. A couple of times I looked over and it had stopped on random curves and such, but then it would do 3 or 4 laps without doing it, and then sometimes it's never done it since. So yeah, overall the continuity seems absolutely fine, and it seems to be pretty reliable. It does occasionally stop on the express points, again for obvious reasons, but overall the performance is really, really nice and stable. Let's try that crawl again, see if it's gotten any better. Turn it up real slow. The crawl actually was phenomenal to begin with, so if it's better now, that really will be impressive. Here we go. Look at that. Very, very good. And it's a bit like Bachmann's Wickham trolley in that regard. That was an insanely tiny little mechanism, and yet it ran so well. Look at that. Yeah, the performance is phenomenal. The pulling power is basically negligible. I hooked it up to my Newton meter and just could not get it to register. The needle didn't move at all, so don't expect this thing to be pulling very much. Again, I think that's fairly obvious. In real life, I expect it would just be riding along on its own, possibly with a wagon. It does beg the question as to why those big chunky couplings have been fitted as standard, but it does mean that I can test it with just a couple of wagons. Realistically speaking, how much more than this is the thing really going to be hauling in real life? So I think if it can manage those two, then we don't have a problem where pulling power is concerned. And with that, let's go and see if it couples all right. Here we go. Look at that. The performance is very, very good. Very good. That just shows how ridiculously small this thing is. I mean, it's not coupled, hang on. But yeah, the roof of it barely reaches the level of that wagon. That is insane, look at that. And yet, I reckon it should manage them. I mean, 2 wagons, I don't think there are many locos that couldn't manage 2 wagons. Oops, wrong way, hang on. Look at that, that's fine. There we go, let's get it up to about 40 speed so it makes the points. There we are, that's 40 speed, and it has now managed it at 40 speed, which just proves that it's getting better, doesn't it? Oh, nearly died there, but we're okay. Anyway, so today's theme is tiny locomotives, so see which others you can spot. I'll give you the ones that are running though. So here we have the Ruston Shunter, you know, the one that's £60 cheaper on RRP, or something like that. Was it 60? Yeah, I think it was 60. Man, here it is. Die-cast, by the way, largely made of metal. Very good puller, very, very nice indeed. And it also came with a wagon, of course, which is a right bonus, isn't it? So there it goes, lovely Ruston Queen Anne, that one. And then on the inside line, one that I've talked a little bit about already, from Bachmann, actually, it is the Wickham trolley. And this actually has much, much more detail than the, whatever it is, I can't even remember the name, X625 or something, I don't know. Yeah, it's got much more detail, and yet it was considerably cheaper, even this. So there we go. Right, anyway, enjoy the running session, let's catch up with it. It is so cool to see this running so well, and look at the size of it. It's almost farcical, isn't it, how small it is compared with the wagons. Reminds me of one of those, I don't know, one of those vehicles that you get on the seaside, you know, those gravity-powered railways that work on water and they're real steep. I forget the name of those now, but yeah, it just looks like one of those, doesn't it? There goes Matt Wickham trolley. A bit out of focus, actually, never mind. And yeah, I mean, the light is worse than useless, isn't it? I say worse than useless because if they just hadn't put it in, the effect would be the same, yet the price might be a little bit less. So yeah, I will stick with the opinion that the light is actually genuinely worse than useless. But that's probably the only aspect of the actual performance that I would knock. I have to admit, I really have enjoyed looking at this though. It's right up my street, isn't it? Tiny little loco, great little mechanism. It does kind of push my buttons, if that's, I don't even know if that's rude, sorry if it is. Yeah, besides the price, which makes absolutely no sense, it's good, I like it, I do like it overall. Not as much as I like the Ruston though, look at that. I'd recommend those any day of the week. I mean, why wouldn't you? They're better, and they're cheaper. Look at that. Brilliant. It entirely disappears behind 2 wagons. Look at that. From behind it could literally just be 2 wagons. going along by themselves. Oh God, you've got to love it, haven't you? It is so cool. Right, so let's do some ratings then for the Austrian track inspection trolley. I guess that's the best name for it, isn't it? So the level of detail, I've given it sort of middle of the road. I've given it 3-star. Some aspects of the detail were fantastic. I love those little windscreen wipers. They were really good, and the decoration looked to be fantastic as well. However, the interior really let it down. When a model costs as much as this does, it's got to be realistic, hasn't it? And unfortunately, the interior did put an end to that. And also the lack of etched grills and other metal parts did make it look a little bit toy-like, whereas obviously it really shouldn't for what it cost. So yeah, I mean, the level of detail's all right. Some bits of it are really good, others not so much. I've given it middle of the road. The performance, I've given it the benefit of the doubt on some of the cutting out that it's been doing, because it doesn't do it very often, but it's incredibly smooth, really, really good crawl, nice and quiet, and it's even got the working lights as well. Generally speaking, the performance is fantastic, and overall I would say it is worthy of 5-star. The power is pretty much non-existent. I am glad they haven't used any traction tyres on this, but the model is still so light that it can't manage more than just a handful of wagons, which is perfectly adequate. I should say that's not really a complaint. It's absolutely fine for these to run light, or with just a wagon, I should imagine, or 2 at the most. So for the actual intended purpose, it is absolutely fine, so no complaints there. The mechanism is also really good. I've given it 5-star. I'm not a fan of coreless motors, but I can't deny that this one works really, really well, if that is in fact what it is. Proper bearings on the wheel set, metal chassis block, which seems to be good. I really can't see any way to fault the mechanism, to be honest with you, so I have given that 5-star. Quality, I've given just 4-star. Generally the build quality is really, really good. Nothing's dropped off it. Everything's decorated neatly. All of the details are also neatly applied, which is really good. I have just knocked off a star for the plastic construction of the body. A little bit more metal work might have made this a bit more realistic, a little bit heavier, which it desperately needs, and a little bit better quality feeling, I would say. But besides that, yeah, the quality is definitely not a problem. Value for money then. Now, I think the RRP, the insane RRP of £149.90 is deserving of 1-star, I think. The price I paid from Rails, £49.50, is better. I would have given that 3-star, so I've decided to split the difference and give it 2. It is far too expensive for what it is, unfortunately. It would be worth £50 or more if it was die-cast and had ultra-realistic interiors and that kind of thing, but it sadly isn't any of that, so no, can't get a good score on value. Overall then, that's not too bad. It's fairly average, I would say, 7.11 out of 10. Let's put that into the logbook. There we go, 31st, just above the Hornby Standard Class 4 and below the Electrotrend Barricaldo. Yeah, overall, absolutely fine. If you can find one for a decent price, go for it. There's absolutely nothing wrong with them, and they are reasonably good quality. Don't pay more than 50 quid though, because I think you will be disappointed. Well, there you have it then, folks. Very, very nice. I mean, unless you can get this for an extreme discount, it's not worth it. Let's not kid ourselves here. But it is a nice little novelty. Lovely thing to run. The performance actually is very, very good. And I suppose if you do model this sort of thing, which, well, not many people in the UK do, as far as I'm aware. But if you're out there in Europe, hello, then yeah, maybe this is something I could recommend. But not at the European prices, I don't know. But looking at some of the other Liliput products, I mean, it looks as though this actually isn't particularly expensive compared with the rest of them, which is worrying, to say the least. Have a look if you want to. They're on Bachmann's website, but just make sure you're sitting down and make sure you've got a stiff drink when you do, otherwise you might fall. Anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I did enjoy it, don't get me wrong, and overall I think it's a decent model. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Was I harsh? Was I not harsh enough? Do let me know. But for now, thanks for watching. See you on the next one. Cheers, folks.